Joining me now is Congressman Adam Schiff. He was an impeachment manager during Donald Trump's first impeachment trial. He was a member of the House Select Committee on January 6th, and he knows a thing or two about dealing with propaganda and all sorts of bullies. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me this evening. So I wanted to start just with some of what I just went through, because clearly what Trump did this weekend, accusing Joe Biden of being anti-democratic, I see some parallels here with what the Kremlin has done in the past, their tactic of projecting what they are doing onto their opponent. Do you?
Absolutely. There's real method to Donald Trump's madness, and it's not a playbook that he created. It's one that has been used, I think, by autocrats the world over and for a long time, and that is accuse your opponents of what you do. Donald Trump's argument is really not that he's not corrupt or that he's not a liar. Rather, his argument is everyone is corrupt, everyone are liars. But I'm your crook. I'm your liar. You should be with me. And it's not just Donald Trump using this playbook. It's also Republicans in Congress. Donald Trump gets impeached on a legitimate basis twice. So they're going to impeach Joe Biden illegitimately. And why? To dilute the stain, to accuse Joe Biden of the same kind of misconduct that Donald Trump committed, when there is obviously no misconduct in the case of Joe Biden, but rather an effort by Republicans in Congress to muddy the waters, to dilute the stain of what Donald Trump went through. You see it in, people like Elise Stefanik accusing Nancy Pelosi of being an authoritarian or an autocrat. It's absurd, but if they can persuade enough people that, oh, everybody does it, then they hope to at least muddy the waters. They undoubtedly are aware Americans are deeply concerned with Donald Trump's anti-democratic plans, his statements about terminating the Constitution, his intention to eviscerate the civil service, and so much more, weaponize the Justice Department, and he is trying to muddy the waters.
The muddying, it seems it's laughable, it's maddening, it's absurd, as you said, but sometimes it also works. That's why people keep doing it. I mean, what should everybody be doing to prevent this projection tactic from working?
You're right. It seems almost laughable to hear Donald Trump accuse somebody of violating norms. I think that may be the first time we heard that word out of his mouth. But in terms of what we can do, I think you're exactly right. We have to be proactive. When we see, as we are now, Donald Trump saying that he would be winning in California and New York and these other states if only elections weren't rigged, we need to prepare voters for inevitable claims of rigging in the elections when they come. We saw in the last presidential cycle that Donald Trump said that if he lost his early lead, it would have been because of fraud. We need to get out ahead and remind people, no, the absentee ballots often look very different than the ballots cast on Election Day because Democrats use them more extensively than Republicans. So we need to remind people of the facts in advance. We need to expose what Donald Trump is saying and arguing. And, demonstrate the flagrancies of these falsehoods and keep, holding his feet to the fire.
One of your former colleagues, Liz Cheney, just wrote a book. It's coming out tomorrow. Rachel Maddow's interviewing her shortly. She had this to say. I want to listen to something she had to say and get your thoughts on the other end.
Do you believe if Donald Trump were elected next year that he would try to stay in office beyond a second term? That he would never leave office?
There's no question.
You think he would try to stay in power forever?
Absolutely.
So she's pretty confident he would just try to stay in power. We've seen that in other autocracies, and we've seen it work in other autocracies. What do you think?
Well, I think she's absolutely right that Donald Trump will never leave office voluntarily. He just won't. And if anybody has any doubt about that, they should look at what he tried to do in the last presidential election. He lost. But they should listen to what Donald Trump has to say today. He's making it clear again that when he loses, he will contest it. He will argue that it's rigged and fraudulent, and he will terminate the Constitution if he is allowed to. He's also made it clear one of his plans is to use the military domestically. He tried to do that when he was president. And so, we need to take his threats seriously because we've seen him act on them. And this is who he is. And I think part of what we're seeing also is his team must have told him that he is frightening people with all of his anti-democratic talk and plans. And he has never one to back down in any way. So his response is, I'm simply going to accuse them of what I'm doing.
All that projection. Congressman Adam Schiff, thank you so much for joining me this evening.